What's going on, guys? Welcome to Vibecode Summer Camp. It's been fun with you guys and just really getting to build with everyone. I think I always say this: we're in a very interesting time when it comes to shipping apps. I know folks are gearing up to go to San Fran next week, but we're still building. We are still building remotely. So if you're still here with me, this is week 2. We're going to week 3 next week. Super exciting. By now, you should be having your MVPs ready, right? They should be ready, fine tuning them. Because next week we're going to be talking about validation, distribution, how to get eyes on them, just to make sure that you're actually painting the story for users to actually use your product. So super exciting things coming up for all the builders here today. Just to recap a little bit of what we went over the last class. In the last class, we went over prompt framework on how to really leverage the COCI prompting framework. So what that looks like is pretty much providing context, output, constraints, and iteration, right? So now we're segueing into debugging. Debugging is probably my least favorite part of vibe coding, but it's probably the most essential thing that you need when you're vibe coding. But all of this ties in together on how to really structure your vibe debugging prompts and being able to now figure out, how to fix a certain issue, whether it's an API connection, whether it's a user flow, whether it's a certain button that's not working. This is a session to really hone in on and kind of get that basic fundamentals. So I didn't make it as super technical because I know there's some first timers here that may not understand, the technicality on how to debug. But happy to also be a guide after this session today and kind of give you more nuance and tips. So let's start. So vibe debugging. Honestly, again, my least favorite part of vibe coding, but probably the most crucial and fundamental aspect of vibe coding is really thinking of how to be a detective whenever that error comes into place, right? When your app doesn't work the way you want it to be, these are the things that you need to figure out, right? And especially if you understand the user flow and you understand what you have built thus far, the first question that you need to ask yourself is what went wrong, right? In what phase of your build did it go left, right? Where are you seeing these error message? It's important to know where exactly you went wrong on the build and where you're getting this error, because that tells you the approximate phase of where you're at in your build and kind of pinpointing those exact details on how to fix it, right? So what went wrong, right? Is it the API? Is it the slow connection to the API? The APIs are not communicating effectively, right? And then where did it go wrong, right? I think that also pinpoints exactly in your build where are we going wrong? Is it on the landing page? Is it in the settings page, right? Really figuring out these essential questions so you can get in that phase of like, okay, what exactly do I need to do now, being that I know these answers, to now go ahead and vibe debug my build? And then last but not least, how do we fix it, right? How do we fix this issue? I think what makes it a lot easier for builders is that you're able to communicate with Modu. And with Modu, think of it as like your right-hand person to debug and ask the right questions. Now, I wouldn't solely leave it up to Modu though, right? I think with anything, there still needs to be some type of prompting that needs to be done in order to fix your issue. So as with everything, right? If you're vibe debugging, there needs to be context, right? Set the stage, paint the picture, right? This goes back to our last class on Wednesday. You set the picture of what's going on, what's wrong, and I'll set some examples here later on just to kind of paint the picture for you. But it's important to set the picture, right? Set the tone. What exactly is happening, right? And then tell Modu the output that you want based on the error message that you're getting, right? What exactly do you want to be the desired results out of that fix, right? And then any constraints that you may have, right? Set the boundaries of your prompt so AI knows ideally not to add another layer of APIs or not to add another feature, right? Because again, we don't want to over engineer what we're trying to fix. We're just trying to debug at this point, right? And iterate, right? You're the tester, you're the user, you're the builder. You need to test, right? So in the phase of you testing, try to also test in a different environment, right? Like maybe try your phone, maybe try a tablet of some sort, right? Because sometimes you may get different experiences and you want to make sure that all experiences are equal when you're debugging and when you're shipping your product. So the debug method, I want to keep this as simple as possible for you guys, especially if you're running into issues. I think this is the best way to honestly paint the picture for you when you're debugging. So for D, it defines what's wrong, right? Be specific when you're writing your prompt, right? Context is everything. I cannot stress this enough. When you're building, it's one thing, but when you're debugging, you have to define exactly what's wrong with your build, what's going on, right? You're the builder, but you're also the tester. You're one of the first testers. So whatever you go ahead and input into the AI platform or into the chat or with Modu in this case, right? It needs to be very specific. It cannot be vague, right? Like I've seen times where I see builders say, "Oh, the API is not working." I think we know that. I know that the API is not working, but what about the API is not working? Are you not getting the accurate weather data? Are you not getting the accurate output, right? You have to be very specific because if you're vague with certain inputs, then what I will always say is you get what you put out, right? So it's like input output, right? What you put in is what you get out. So the more detailed you are, the more, you know, what I would say more efficient the solution would be, right? So don't be lazy in defining what's wrong. Really give it the meats and potatoes. Be very specific because that is the only way the AI will understand what you're trying to do and trying to debug, right? E for exam. Examine everything that is happening, right? I think that we're so focused on building, 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 but then sometimes we fail to realize that we also have to examine what's going on in our build, right? If you're building an app and you're realizing that the loading time is too long, right? Maybe that's not normal. Maybe that's not a pleasant user experience, right? You want to be able to examine what's going on, why it's happening, and how can we fix it. All right. Then for B, B for debug, B, break it down. Break it down into smaller pieces, right? I often see builders try to go ahead and fix everything all at once, but sometimes in my experience, it overwhelms the AI. Like if you try to give it way too much task to handle all at once, you're bound for more bugs, you're bound for more errors, right? Once you find what's wrong and you know exactly what's happening, break it down into smaller pieces of that issue or that problem, and then try to iterate on that and construct a prompt where we're fixing problems link by link, right? Think of this as like a chain link, right? It sometimes you don't want to go ahead and solve the entire issue. You want to figure out, is it the API input, right? Or is it the API output? What exactly is going on? So take it piece by piece. Don't try to fix everything all in one shot, right? This is where the learning lesson comes into place. And honestly, as vibe coders, I think we're in a place where you have to be a sponge and be forever a student, right? Understand why it broke, right? I think that's important. And maybe you can ask Modu, hey, why did this happen? And I think Modu has a really nice way in even catching errors and just saying like, hey, this happened because of X, Y, and Z, just depending on that certain circumstance. So that's why I personally enjoy chatting with Modu, because Modu catches on errors even way before it spits out the code, right? So that's why I highly suggest for users to go on chat mode, right? Really speak to Modu before you implement your build or before you implement that code to build your product, right? And then alongside with Modu, because Modu is your AI companion, generate a fix that works, right? It may not work the first time, but it could work the second time, right? Once you realize that this fix that you got works, then try to iterate on that and see how you can continuously use that as the rinse and repeat for other features that may go left, right? Now, not all errors are the same, not all errors are equal, but it allows you to also get you in that mind frame of, okay, if this worked, let me use the same prompt framework to one, provide context, define what's wrong, examine exactly what's going on, and put that in the prompt, and then break down that big issue into smaller issues so you can work towards overall fixing that overall arching issue, right? So not trying to go into it all at once, but piece by piece. Now, if you can go all at once, then cool. But I highly suggest to avoid any bugs, future bugs, and over engineering your build to really break it down into smaller pieces. Because I promise you, good things take time. All right. So define the problem. Be super specific about what's wrong, why it's happening, right? Some examples that I think are good. Well, let's actually go over what is bad, right? Because I often see this. Oh, the AI doesn't work. I've seen this in a lot of my classes. Folks will say, hey, the AI doesn't work. What's going on, right? Instead of putting yourself in that mind frame like the AI doesn't work, because clearly the AI works, right? It's just more or less something in your build doesn't work. Let's figure out exactly what's happening, right? Go through the user flow, right? Experiment, right? You need to test out your own product. Too often I see builders kind of just build, and never test their product. And then the moment they hit like this threshold of bugs, it's like, well, I don't know what happened. Well, you should test out your product and see what happens, right? So a good example of just being super specific about what's wrong with the build or the bug that you're seeing or experiencing is this. When users click generate image, they wait 30 seconds, then see an error, right? Like now you're telling Modu, hey, this is what the user's doing. These are some of the constraints that they're going through. And then the output is they see this error, right? It's all really about user mapping. Like it's all about user story and how you paint the picture to Modu. I feel like that has been very efficient for me when I debug. It's all about user stories. It goes back to our, I want to say our Monday class, the persona development, user stories. User stories are important. And it all ties in not only in building your app, but also debugging your app as well when you're vibe coding. Another example, voice generation works for short text, but fails for long paragraphs, right? Again, you're implementing the stage, right? You're implementing what's going on, right? The context and what's happening, right? What's the output that you're getting? And then now the constraints, right? It fails for long paragraphs, right? These are some of the constraints that you're going through now. So tell that to Modu so Modu understands the picture in a well-formatted way, right? I think the more details you provide, the more efficient your solution would be. Now, if you over input information, or I would say if you over prompt your debugging, I think you'll get a little bit more bugs too as well. So you have to be very specific, very precise and concise all at the same time. So there's an art to debugging. And I truly do believe that if you were to ask this one question, right, what should happen versus what actually happened, you put yourself in this mind state of, okay, you're now in a not only a builder, but you're also a problem solver and trying to figure out, hey, I was supposed to connect to wallet, but that's not the actual flow, right? You also have to map out everything that you're doing when you're debugging. So I think it's super essential to continuously test out your product before you ship, just so you can get familiar with your own product, right? And aside from being familiar with your own product, is also, hey, what I use as a product moving forward, right? I think I tell a lot of the builders this, like, will you use this app yourself, right? Because if you're not, then there's going to be a huge disconnect from the moment that you're building to the moment that you're debugging. There's going to be a huge disconnect with what you're doing and with your building. So D is for define the problem, right? Be very specific when you're doing this. Now, when I say examine everything, I mean everything, right? From checking console, from checking on iPhones to a different computer, from different browsers, from understanding step by step what exactly you did to get this error. Does it happen every time? Is it often? Is it sometimes, right? There's been times where I've built a mini app and then one day it works and another day it doesn't, right? Figuring out, did it work before and what happened and why did it stop, working this time around, right? There's a lot of who, what, where, when it goes into this, right? And you need to get yourself in an almost like Inspector Gadget type of mindset to really figure out like what is really going on, right? I think this is where your curiosity has to go into play too, in trying to just like experiment and figure out and ask the right questions as to what broke, right? An example, image won't generate. So ideally, the user on the iPhone types Sunset Beach, click generate, loading spinner for 60 seconds, then error request failed, right? So if you're able to paint the picture, now your investigation was the user on the iPhone typed Sunset Beach and click generate, and it loaded for 60 seconds and it got an error, then now you have the context, right? You have the picture of what exactly happened. So next, we have to break it down, right? Testing each piece separately, right? I normally, when I do my builds and I go into this debugging mode, I don't like to like debug all at once. I like to go ahead and take it piece by piece, brick by brick, because if I want this to really work for sustainability, I need to make sure that I'm also fixing it along the way, right? So as I mentioned, think of your app like a chain, right? User clicks, your code runs, AI responds, then the results shows up, right? If the code doesn't run, then the AI won't respond, then the results won't show up, right? It's the same thing. If the results don't show up, then that means that the user has to go ahead and click again to try to yield those same results, right? So find where the chain breaks, right? Did the user click register? Did the user click connect wallet? Did the user click generate image, right? What exactly is the user doing to really figure this out? Did your code send a request correctly? And when I say a request, ideally, more or less in this scenario with Ohara, the request to the API. Sometimes there's a miscommunication, what I like to call it, a miscommunication between, your input and your API, right? So making sure that that's configured appropriately through Modu, right? Really having these conversations in chat mode with Modu so you can get to the bottom of what broke, right? And it's also checking too as well, are the APIs connected, sometimes I thought that the API was connected and it was not. So I had to go right back in and connect the API. So a lot of my experiences lately too, like a lot of the experiences that I've experienced building on Ohara, it's really just been like API connections, and it hasn't been nothing too crazy. Like I think that the cool thing about it is the moment you're able to structure your prompts in a very efficient and powerful way, errors become less and less, right? If you're not user mapping your build and figuring out each flow, then that's when you're going to get a lot of bugs, a lot of frustration, because you don't know what's what, you don't know the flow, you don't know where things are breaking. And I truly believe that during my experience in building with Ohara, like at the very beginning, yes, I had a lot of debugging to do. Now, I want to say it's like a less than 5%, honestly, of what I'm doing. Like I could put my prompt in there, and honestly, it's rare on the cases where I gotta like go deep in and like start debugging crazy, because Modu and the agents make it so much easier to build. You're focusing more on distribution, you're focusing more on the creative aspect of building versus trying to debug your app along the way. Now if you're trying to add features, best believe that you may run into some bugs. So let's go on to the next slide then. All right, understanding the root cause, right? What type of problem is this, right? As I mentioned earlier, the most common mistake that builders have are communications issues. And when I mean communications, it's more or less two things. You didn't explain to the AI exactly what you wanted clearly enough, or the APIs is not connecting or not communicating with what you're trying to do, right? Because APIs ideally communicate through your build, right? If you press generate image, that's going to send a communication to the API. It's going to send the data and it's going to say, hey, build this image for me. And the output is going to be that image, right? Where along the lines is it not communicating? Is it in the input? Is it in the output, right? Understanding these things is important. But the biggest one is you didn't communicate it to the AI efficiently. So the AI did not understand clearly enough what you were trying to do, right? And as I mentioned, connection problems. I think connection problems happens to the both best of us. The API could be down, or the AI service could be down, right? A lot of these stuff that you guys are working with when it comes to the APIs are AI, ideally, right? Open AI. But ideally, there's some other nuances where you're not using AI and you're using on-chain kit, you're using Privy, or you're using Third Web, right? That's when it becomes a little bit different, and understanding the nuances as to like, okay, is it not building the right smart contract? And again, that goes back into communication issues, right? You have to be really specific with what you're building. You can't just say, hey, I am building a betting game where 70% goes to the escrow and 10% goes to here and 30% goes there. Like, you have to be very specific as to where funds are going, what type of smart contract you're trying to build, right? You really have to map this out the same way how you would map out a user story is the same way how you would have to map out this smart contract for your build for your game, right? So again, it all comes down to user mapping, user stories. Map out everything, and I promise you, you will save yourself a lot of headaches down the line. User experience issues, right? I think we all go through that, right? You may go into an app, you click sign in, and then the sign in is just, it may take you back to the landing page, right? It's just not a seamless user experience, right? The app does works, but users don't understand how to use it. I think that happens also to the best of us too as well. But these are some root causes of having some bugs, right? Maybe there's a certain feature that's missing to kind of tie in the loop to make user onboarding better or faster. And speaking of faster, speed problems, right? Kind of goes into that next bullet point there. Everything works, but it takes too long, right? Maybe there's something, a connection with the API and it's not responding efficiently or in time. Maybe there's a certain over engineering of features that is not allowing you to efficiently have this output right away, right? So understanding what you're building is important. It's super important. Thinking that AI knows everything in building, it's a fast highway to failure, right? You need to also have some type of critical problem solving thinking to really understand what is AI is trying to do for me and how can I navigate AI or how can I steer AI along the way. And as builders, you guys should rely on Modu, but also rely on your critical thinking, your problem solving as well. Because at the end of the day, you are the captain of this ship. You have to steer AI to where you want it, right? And that goes back into Wednesday's lesson, right? Context, output, constraints, and iterate, right? You're literally telling AI what to do, right? And in allowing to have these contexts and these outputs and these constraints, AI understands a lot better its parameters, what to do and what not to do. And last but not least, edge cases. It works most of the time, but it breaks in weird situations. I think we've all experienced this as builders. And these root causes are something that we do have to get to the bottom of it. And again, you have Modu to help you out in debugging these issues. when errors come up, especially at the the early days of Ohara, it was just like a copy and paste. You get the error. I personally never understood the error. I'm gonna be honest with you. Never really understood the error at first. Then I started copy and pasting into like OpenAI or Claude, and I started to learn a lot of these like errors and what's going on. And then Modu came out, and then Modu just like explained it with such nuance as far as like what's going on. Why is on-chain kit not connecting? Why is the API not connecting? Right? You guys have it so much easier now with Modu. Please take advantage of Modu, because it will definitely help you not only, build, but also debug. Like debugging is important. So how to generate the right fix, right? And everyone is different, right? Everybody has their own sauce. But for me, how I go about it is in these next following steps, right? What I do is I go for making more instructions for AI, right? And when I mean making more instructions, what I mean is providing the context, the instructions to AI to be more specific, adding examples as to what I want for this to be, right? You're the visionary, you're the builder. So you have to ideally provide the context. This goes back to Wednesday's class. What context do you want in fixing this bug? And then what output you want, right? What do you yield to get out of this fix, right? Then we go back into constraints, right? You have to set clear limits and rules as to what exactly you want to fix. Now, this only is going to work if you understand what are you solving. If you don't know what you're solving, it's going to be 10 times harder for you to go ahead and actually debug, right? So it's super important to test, understand where you went wrong with your build, and then now setting that intention of understanding the context of your issue, the output of your issue, of what you want now, and now the constraints. What are the limits? What are the rules? What do you want to not happen again, right? That's very, very important. And that applies with connection problems, with user experience issues. The method that I went over with you guys applies to not only building, but also debugging, right? I think if you're able to use that framework, you're unstoppable. You're literally unstoppable, because I've used it. It has helped me out many of times. I'm at like app 45 right now on Ohara. And the reason why I'm able to ship so fast and so efficiently is because I set up my prompts in a framework where, one, I understand user problems and user solutions. Now, if I'm able to understand that part, then it's easy for me to also generate solutions. And if you have Modu on your side to generate solutions and also implementing the same prompt framework that I provided you guys on Wednesday, you guys are unstoppable. It makes shipping a lot quicker, less of a headache, and there's not a lot of back and forth that you need to do. So understanding your product, honestly, it's important, overall important. So if you guys want this just for your own sake, I'd be more than happy to send this out, so you guys can have it. So some key takeaways, right? Debugging is like detective work, right? It's really about gathering the clues, understanding what's happening, being very specific, right? Saying it doesn't work tells me nothing. It tells the AI nothing, right? Being very specific as to saying, hey, this weather API is not showing the accurate data. It is showing 75 degrees Celsius when it should be 75 degrees Fahrenheit, right? Like, be very specific as to what you're trying to debug in the simplest terms. And I'm using this because I understand not everyone is technical, but everyone wants to build, right? And that's okay. But at the same time, there has to be some type of prompt engineering to be able to yield the results that you want when you're debugging your app. One step at a time. Test each piece separately. Don't do it all together, because that's where more bugs come in and you may over engineer your product. And then fix the causes, right? Not the symptoms, right? Solve the real problem, right? I think sometimes we tend to think that when we have this one issue, we have to also fix this other issue. No, fix what's causing this, right? Solve the real problem. Don't try to, beat around the bush and try to navigate somewhere else, because that has happened to me before, right? Next time something breaks, pull out this checklist, okay? Go through it step by step, all right? Read the error messages. These error messages are there for a reason, right? These error messages are trying to help you out and letting you know, like, hey, this is what's going on. This is the error, right? Plug that into Modu, right? Ask Modu questions. Hey, Modu, what does this mean? Provided the context, provided the output that you got, right? And then, if Modu explains to you, hey, this is exactly what's going on, then now provide Modu the instructions to now fix that bug, right? Provided the constraints, and then iterate again, right? Context, output, constraints, and iterate. I'm going to be saying this until the end of camp. You put yourself in that framework with building and debugging, it is going to make your life a lot easier. Okay. Structure is everything when you're vibe coding. If you have no structure, all you're doing is spitballing, right? You're spitballing and you're throwing spaghetti everywhere, and hopefully that it sticks somewhere. Don't go about it that way. I think the most efficient way to vibe code is to be strategic, have a plan, have structure, and have some sense of literally guiding the AI to where you want it to be, as far as what results you want to yield and the outputs you want for your app. Okay. I'm not sure if Slava's back, man. I wanted to kind of pick Slava's brain a little bit. Slava, you back, man?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah, man. I'm not sure if you missed it or not. You probably stepped away a little bit, but I was just saying, I know that you're building radio right now. It is probably top. I'm not sure if it's top 3, top 4. You let me know. On the base app right now. You're going through some iterations right now and debugging your own app right now. So I would love to hear your process. How do you go about it? Because every builder is different when they debug. So we'd love to kind of just hear some thoughts on how you're going about it and your approach.
Yeah, so thank you for highlighting it. It's top 3 in the music category right now. I'm trying to get to number 1. So if you're on base
Nice.
app, please go click on it, give it a listen. So initially, when I had the radio published finally as a mini app, I didn't have any of the Farcaster SDK stuff integrated beyond just the manifest to be able to have it indexed properly. So I started connecting your profile so that you'd be able to like and have a history. I also made it to where it's optional to connect your wallet and Farcaster. So if you go on actual baseradio.io, you can still use it without having to have a profile and whatnot. But if you want to utilize likes, history in the future, I'll probably add badges and whatnot for exploring different countries or different stations. So if you want to use all of those little integrations, then yes, you'll have to log in. But getting that to work was a little bit of an issue because there were some front end issues I was having. So Modu can debug on its own when it's an infrastructure or coding error. Right. So I don't know if you noticed it with the new builder. Now you no longer have to copy paste code errors. So what Modu will do is after you finish building, at the end you'll see a card that shows up where it's checking the app for issues. So what it'll do is it'll check all of the infrastructure issues, all of the coding connections, make sure everything's connected properly. But there is no way for Modu to know if there's any client-side errors. And client-side error means your actual device or the client that you're using to open the app, right? So sometimes that's your desktop, sometimes that's your mobile. And even in those frameworks, there's different browsers that you can open on your mobile device or on your desktop device. And every single browser kind of has its own standards or its own limitations. Yep. So depending on which client you're using, sometimes you'll get an error that's just for that browser or just that device, which Modu has no way of realizing. These are the hardest errors to debug, I think, because you need to go back to your design of the app and realize, okay, it was working at this iteration. What is it that
Yep.
I changed? And when I changed this thing, what else did it affect or might it have affected? And in that case, you can narrow it down for Modu and say, Modu, I'm getting a new error after we have added so and so.
Right.
And this is the error that I'm seeing, or I'm not seeing an error. Let's log for an error. So the best way to do this, if you don't know how to open your developer tools and look for the error yourself, on mobile, really, it's difficult. There's no way for you to do that unless you're like mirroring your device. So on desktop, it's possible. You can hit F12. You'll get your
Yep.
developer tools. You'll get a console log, and you'll be able to copy that console log, paste it into the chat, explain to Modu, hey, Modu, this is what I'm seeing. This is the error that's coming up. I'm unable to find out why. You could even state that. Let's do some research and see what might go wrong. Because Modu can go through like, okay, these are the things that might have happened. And then if you read through those things, one of those things might make more sense to you because you're the developer. Modu is there to help you, but it has no idea what stage of your development you're on. Only
Right.
you know that as the developer. So when you're talking to Modu, Modu doesn't know, what was the last step, what was the new step that was added, which direction were you going in when you added this step that caused an error. So when you're copying the console log and pasting it to Modu, you can ask Modu what Modu thinks could have gone wrong. It'll read through the log. It'll give you certain situations or scenarios that could have brought up this issue. Reading through those scenarios, you yourself might find one that applies better than the others. And then you can try to attack that error through the avenue that Modu gave you. Or what you can do is log that action. So let's say the error is I'm hitting a button and I'm unable to connect my wallet, let's say. Tell Modu to log that button, right? You can tell Modu, hey, Modu, let's log for errors when I'm clicking the connect button for my wallet. Because for some reason I'm getting a client-side error. And what Modu will do is it'll include error logs in the actual action so that you know when you press the button what happens. And a lot of times you won't have to go into the developer tools anymore. It'll come out right on the screen. It'll say undefined, splice or something like that.
Yeah.
And then you can copy that, paste it, and Modu will fix it for you. So it really is about working with the scenario, understanding what step might have broken your app, and then trying to integrate your solution with what Modu is presenting, right? So
Yeah.
if
Yep.
you're not going to listen to Modu and you're not going to read through the scenarios, you might be giving it things that are out of context, and then that'll
Yep.
bring a new bug, and then you're going to be sitting there for hours trying to unwind this ball of yarn, I guess, that you started. So it's
Yep.
better to just focus on one thing at a time, work with Modu, really read what solutions it's providing. And try to work with the assistant. That way you can actually find a solution. Another workaround that might work is if you're facing, let's say you've gotten to a state of your app that you're happy with, right? And you want to add something, but you don't know if it's going to break the app or not. Because I've been there, right? Where you're like, okay, I'm happy. This is 80% of the way. But this last 20%, I might break it because of the way AI works, right? So what you can do is publish it at that state, right? 80% complete. It might still be missing some parts, but publish it at like the basic level. What you can do afterwards is remix your own publication. So remix it into a new build. It won't break your publication that you have, but you will have a new sandbox to play with and experiment with, right? You'll experiment in that sandbox. If it works, great. You go back to your publication and you implement it. If it doesn't, you can remix it again and try again until you finally find the solution to that issue without having to unravel a whole new set of bugs and have to address, oh my God, how do I go back to at least the working version? I broke it completely. So I think this is a good workaround for those that are looking for kind of like a state machine, if you will. So you can remix your own states, publish a working state, and then experiment with that remixed version.
Wow. Yeah, I honestly that's actually a pretty cool way to do it. I never thought of it about that way, and like publishing first and then remixing it. and seeing if that works, because you're, you know, yeah, ideally you're validating if your theory works, and if it works, that means you didn't break your build. So I really love that flow. Question, it, let's say for example, because I feel like I've done this before, so and I don't think I've tried it with Modu yet, actually. So there's been moments where I would say, hey, save this as a V1, save this as a V2. Can we still do that with Modu?
If you give it a checkpoint and you prompt it in the beginning, like, hey, I want to be able to create checkpoints, it
Yeah.
will work for that checkpoint. But if you're building and you've lost context, it's been like 3 or 4 prompts since your last checkpoint, you will have to reiterate it every single time. Because what's happening on the back
Gotcha.
end is it's committing to a repo for you on GitHub. And every time you hit publish, it commits that to the live version. So you want to make sure that your commits are connected to each other. So like anytime you prompt, it's a new commit on the back end.
Right. Okay. That makes sense.
Versioning
That
is
makes total
coming though.
sense.
So we will have new updates. We have a lot of new developer tools that are coming that you guys have been asking for since like May, I believe. So yeah, I mean, everything that you just asked for will be solved. It's just a matter of time, and we'll definitely announce them as they're coming.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Slava, for that. Again, another builder in the game, building one of the top apps right now on base. So, you know, deployed from Ohara. So I think that's really, really dope. Check out Radio. You know what I'm saying? Radio. Over how many stations? 5,000 stations, right?
Yeah, 5,000 stations.
Jeez, man. That is fire. So yeah, man, you know, you heard it from a builder himself. That is his flow. That is his workflow and how he goes about debugging, especially for his scenario, right? Every scenario is different. You know, I think the important thing is the context, right? The context, what the output you want, what are the constraints that you're implementing to make sure that you're not over engineering your build, and then having these conversations and reading through the solutions that Modu is providing you. I think that's probably the easiest way to go about it if you're not super technical. I'm not super technical. I'm more of like product mind, but I'm learning, right? I'm learning alongside with Modu and understanding different nuances and how to go about just overall problem solve what's going on with my bug or my build overall. There's a couple of you in the chat here. Be more than happy to go ahead and open it for Q&A, and yeah, let's just chat. And if there's no questions, I mean, hey, I mean that must be that you're already beyond debugging at this point. Like you're already like ready to ship your product. That's what you're telling me. But if not, my door is always open. You guys can always DM me. I wanted to keep this session very high level, but at the same time weave it into what we've been learning this past week, and not kind of just beat a dead horse with it, right? I think the overarching just key takeaway from this week is just your prompt framework. How you build and how you debug, it's very important. But it's also important how you go ahead and structure that framework and making sure that you get the yielded results you want from a build perspective and then from a debugging perspective. So remember this: context, output, constraints, iterate. You do that cycle again and again and again while you debugging and building. I think you're going to be in good hands. So if there is no questions, you guys already know, please feel free to DM me. I'll be in the Discord. You shoot me an email. You can shoot me a DM. My DMs are always open. I want to start seeing some builds now. Okay. I want to start seeing some videos. Start posting the videos on X. Start posting the videos, you know, on Discord. If you are posting it on Discord, you know, make sure you're posting it on X. We want to see a build. What are you building? All right. Tag Ohara. Tag me, tag Slava, you know, tag whoever you want to see your build, and we'll be more than happy to provide you that feedback because we want you to win. As builders, we want you to excel. So if there's no questions, happy building. If you're heading out to San Fran this upcoming week, have fun, continue to build. I wish I was there. It's a huge FOMO right now for me that I'm not there, but I'm here with you guys and building remotely. So happy Friday, guys. Peace and love. Continue to build in all words. Cheers.